Hello, welcome to this on-demand webinar today. My name is Jon Cheek. I'm here from UniTasterDays, and with these events, we provide impartial guides to studying different subjects at university. And today, we're going to look at politics. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that I'm joined by Dr. Jenny Mathers, a senior lecturer in international politics at Aberystwyth University. So, Jenny, first things first, we're looking at politics today. Can you just tell me why might students be interested in studying politics at university?
So I think if you're interested in the big questions of today and indeed every day, what are the big issues that drive our everyday lives? What makes those decisions for us? Who makes those decisions for us? How do those certain people get into the position where they have that power, and how do they exercise it? And what kinds of decisions do they make? All of these kinds of questions are really fundamental to studying politics. So if you're interested in the world around you, if you're interested in why things are the way that they are and how they can be changed, including changed by individuals as well as by groups and societies, then politics is a fantastic subject for you to study. It also offers you a wide range of different kinds of experiences, as well as different kinds of skills. And I know we'll talk about careers later on, but I think there's a whole wide range of employability skills, from things like critical reading and thinking and analysis, collecting data as well as subjecting it to close scrutiny, building arguments, using evidence to develop those arguments, and then expressing yourself coherently and persuasively, both in writing, but also the ability to speak in public and semi-public kinds of venues and carry your audience with you. All of these are kinds of skills that politics students will come away with.
Wow. And it's so topical at the moment, isn't it, as a subject, Jenny? Like politics is always been everywhere, but it feels like now it's more everywhere than ever. And it's great, transferable skills at the forefront and stuff. So, right. So if I move on now to a student that's, say, interested in going ahead to apply for politics, if they start a politics course, can you just give me a little grasp? And we touched on it a little bit in the last question as well, but what can they expect if they study politics at university?
Okay, so I think I would start in much the same place, in much saying that you will address really big, important questions in terms of how power is exercised, and who gets it and how they get it. So that might mean that you could study things like elections. You might study things like constitutions, other kinds of institutions of politics like parliaments, judiciaries, these kinds of things, executive offices and how they operate. You might study things like, political protest and social movements and how people working at the grassroots can really make a difference in terms of changing things. You might also, and indeed you probably will, study things like ideas and ideology. So how are different ways of exercising power justified, and how are they understood? How do we understand that relationship between society and the state? What kind of a state should there be? How much should it do? Should you have a minimal sort of a state that just provides you with basic sort of security, and maybe the police and the army and this kind of thing? Or should you have a more expansive state that provides a more kind of comprehensive system of social support and education and aims to move people out of poverty? You might ask questions like, why do we still have poverty? And what determines who is poor and who is rich? You might ask questions around, other kinds of identities, whose identities and privileges get kind of protected, and whose are endangered or marginalized. So all of these are kinds of questions that students can expect to study. They might also indeed, in many places, increasingly look at global issues. So global politics has become a newer aspect of politics in degree studies in many departments. So those are the kinds of sort of big questions and topics that people can expect to study. They can also expect to learn sort of research methods and use those in their work, both for like maybe a final year dissertation, but maybe also in other kinds of modules. They could expect, for example, to be taught in a variety of different formats. So classically, there's the lecture, which everyone who's taking the module is there together, listening to what the lecturer has to say, taking notes, maybe interacting with them. And then there's the seminar, which is a smaller group where you meet maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks to discuss certain kinds of readings and topics. But you might also have workshops, which tend to be larger groups where students work together in teams on particular tasks, which they might have to sort of present at the end of a 2-hour slot, for example. You might also be assessed in a variety of different ways. So again, essays and exams are often the backbone of a degree kind of subject like politics, but you might also write in other kinds of formats. So for example, you might write policy briefs as though you're writing for a policymaker audience, like a parliamentarian or a minister, or you might write an opinion piece. Students in one of my modules write an opinion piece as though they're writing for a newspaper, and it gives them a different way of writing. It develops different kinds of skills and allows them to write for other audiences. So different kinds of formats. You might also expect to combine politics with other subjects. So you can take politics in most places as a single honor subject, or you can combine it. And typical subjects that you would see combined with politics would include things like law, history, economics, geography, and of course, languages. So politics and a language is a really good combination if you're interested in a career that might take you abroad, where you have the opportunity to use that language. And very often that kind of a combination would come in a 4-year degree package, where someone would spend one of the years in the country studying in the language itself. So really develop that fluency. So you can expect to maybe have some choices about whether you study politics on its own or whether you study it together with something else. You could also expect extracurricular opportunities. And so typically, politics students often have the opportunity to apply for internships or placements. These might happen in Parliament itself, in the House of Commons, maybe the House of Lords. They might happen at regional, government. So in Wales, you might have a placement at the Welsh Senedd in Cardiff Bay. If you study in Scotland, you might have the opportunity for a placement in the Scottish Parliament, or maybe local government. Those are other places where people might have placements as part of a politics degree, or indeed with NGOs or international organizations like NATO, the EU, the UN. So all of these are sort of additional things that can come with a politics degree, which are very common, and maybe things to kind of look out for.
Jenny, thank you. We produce these videos for exactly that, like insight into what students can expect, why they might consider different courses, because as you know, so many students perhaps don't think about their course choice enough and then get to university and then think, oh, maybe I should have chosen differently. So thank you for all that. And I studied a combined course where you study one subject with another subject. So that I'm really pleased you mentioned that for students that perhaps looking at multiple subject areas. Thank you. Right. So let's move on now to applications. And say you have a student that's interested in studying politics, and whether that's politics on its own or politics with another subject. Do you have any kind of application considerations, application tips for students thinking about taking things to the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. My biggest tip would be to really pay attention to what the specific departments that you're considering offer to you as options, especially because most of us in whatever department we're in and whatever university we're in, that offers a politics degree, most of us will do sort of the basic core foundational elements in quite similar ways. So you're not going to miss out on any of those major building blocks, no matter where you go. But where the politics degrees are different often lies in the options. And so options are the modules that you take once you've taken your cores and your compulsory modules, typically in the third year, but maybe also in the second year, depending on where you study. And options are really very much led by the research interest and expertise of academic staff in that department. And of course, because different people are employed by different departments, you're going to get quite different experiences, right? So for example, you might end up in a department which really specializes in electoral studies, the study of elections, and you might have the opportunity to dig really deeply into the details of the methodology and study lots of different kinds of elections and different systems. Or you might go to a place which has a lot of area expertise. So you might study the politics in different specific countries or in different regions of the world, like the Middle East or Latin America, for example. You might go to a department that has a lot of expertise in global politics and international relations, in which case you might study issues like climate change and politics, or refugees, migration, or security, these kinds of issues, which are obviously relevant to politics, but take that sort of global perspective. Or you might study other kinds of themes and issues like human rights, democracy, gender in politics. But it really does vary enormously from one department to another. And so it's worth looking beyond the basics and really kind of digging a little bit more deeply into what that department has to offer.
Thank you. So Do you mind if I just ask about your own research, Jenny? Because I know I've kind of followed your work and it's super interesting, but some people watching this perhaps won't know so much. But do you mind just touching on what you do at Aberystwyth?
Yeah. Sure, absolutely. So I have two sort of main areas of research and teaching. One is about Russia. So I do research on Russian politics and security. And in particular, lately, I've been doing work on Russia's war in Ukraine, looking at militarization of children in Russia, and also at the political activism of soldiers' wives and mothers in Russia. And I teach modules about Russia for second and third year students. I teach one called Russian Security in the 21st Century, and I teach another one called Russian Intelligence from Lenin to Putin. So we get 100 years of Russian intelligence. And then my other area of research expertise is about gender and politics and women in war. And you can see that reflected in the research areas that I mentioned, but also it's reflected in my teaching. So I teach a module called Gender, Conflict, and Security. And I teach another one called Women in the Military, which really looks at women's military service and how that relationship between women and state militaries has developed since the First World War, basically.
Wow, Jenny, if I went back to university, I would want you to be my lecturer. That's absolutely fascinating and such an important, relevant research with what's going on now. So final question, Jenny, is linked to careers. So you've got a student that's applied for politics, had a fantastic time on the course and then finishes. What can a student that's studied politics go on to do?
So basically anything they're interested in doing. I mean, politics is not a degree that leads you directly into a single career pathway, right? There's a lot of misperception that if you do a politics degree, then you have to become an MP, for example, or something of that nature. Now you can, and certainly there are plenty of politics graduates who do go into politics, sort of proper, if you like, and stand for office and work with political parties, and become part of the political decision-making process. And that's absolutely open to politics students. They might decide to do something which is connected to politics, but perhaps doesn't involve running for office. So working for the civil service is another common career pathway. And that might be the civil service in the UK as a whole. So working for the Home Office, the Treasury, the Cabinet Office, the FCDO, whatever. Or it might involve working for the civil service of a devolved government, so in Cardiff Bay, in Edinburgh, etc. Or it might involve a local or government, because local government does indeed employ people who have the kinds of skills that politics students have, and who are interested in how politics affects people at the local level. It's super important. So all of those things are possibilities. Also, many politics graduates go on to work for organizations that are kind of seeking to influence politics. So there might be lobbying groups, they might be charities or non-governmental organizations. Some will go on to work for international organizations like the EU or NATO or the UN or the Red Cross or other kinds of big international organizations. Quite a lot go into journalism. So they might go into, writing for newspapers or online publications, or become broadcasters, radio, television, perhaps. There's a wide variety of different kinds of roles in journalism that are possible, both writing and presenting, but also being behind the scenes, working in production and so on. So all of those are definitely possible. Some students go into the armed forces. They make a career in the British Army or the armed forces of another country, depending upon which country they're from. Some go into the security services, the intelligence services. Some go into private industry or business that has an interest in politics or international relations. So I've got quite a few former students who've gone into sort of risk analysis. There are different private companies that offer risk analysis to corporations that are thinking about investing in certain countries or certain regions and so on. All of those are possible. And then, of course, there's a whole wide range of other graduate employment opportunities. So you could, join a big corporate organization like Marks and Spencer's, for example, and into their sort of graduate employment scheme and work your way through that. So really, politics as a subject opens doors rather than closing them down. So the career direction for any graduates really depends first and foremost on what they want to do, but then taking that package of skills that they get from studying the subject and the passion for understanding how the world works and how it can be influenced and changed, taking all of those things together and then deciding which direction they want to move in.
Brilliant. And one thing I've really taken for this video is how many transferable skills students pick up from the course as well. So thank you so much. The final thing for me to do is just to say a huge thank you to Dr. Jenny Mathers joining us from Aberystwyth University. Jenny, thank you.
Thank you.